항상 번번이 국제대회에서 좀 솔직히 아쉽지도 않게 계속 탈락하는 모습이 보여서 그때마다 많이 실망했는데 이번에는 그런 실수도 하지 않게
我觉得他们是没有京东厉害的，然后他们也输给 T1， 所以那我们也输给了京东，所以我觉得我们跟他们，我们肯定会赢他们。我觉得多兰还是有一些很亮眼的操作的，但是我觉得他游戏整体的话，可能打法就是没有那么聪明吧，所以我会利用这一点赢下他。
경계되는 선수는 맞지만 전혀 무서운 선수는 아니라고 생각하고 저도 어떻게 대처해야 할지 되게 많이 알고 있다고 생각하기 때문에 자신 있습니다.
我觉得所有人都知道Chori是一个对线很强的中单，然后我也觉得他对线非常强吧。其实我也是想打根基的时候，如果能换线，我也想去中路跟人对线，我想去中路教给他一把。
일단 지금까지 경기에서 BLG가 수합 전략을 많이 선보였다고 생각이 드는데 수비 선수도 되게 구도를 잘 아는 선수이기 때문에 그냥 하던 대로 하면 이길 수 있을 거라고 생각합니다.
我可能想对多兰说，这次碰到我觉得你要惨了。然后虽然说你们的中单很强，但是如果他 C 了一把，那我就换去中路把他也打爆。
I love it! Vin's not holding any punches, and it's crunch time here at MSI 2023. 2 more best of 5s until the grand final on Sunday, with elimination on the line every day. Welcome back to the Copper Box Arena, live from London, as Gen G and BLG are going to take to the stage to see who gets the honor of fighting T1. My name is Shax, and I'm joined by Emily, Chronicler, and Dagda at the desk. London, you're quiet today. I know it's not full yet, but come on. All right. Listen, I know what you're thinking. Yesterday was just so incredibly insane. How can today top it? It might.
What? When I am hearing Bin saying, I don't just want to beat Doran, I want to move to mid lane, I want to beat Chovy too.
He seems more excited to face Chovy than to face Doran.
Yeah. It's true. Reading that how you will. But as I said yesterday, pressure cooker here in the Copper Box Arena. JDG versus T1 Chronicler. What do you have to say about that series?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Obviously, the game 5 not necessarily going the way that I personally was hoping to, but regardless, if you're a fan of League of Legends, that series was incredible, right? It went to 5 games, some top-notch team fighting, and JDG reaching an international finals for the first time in the Org's history.
Being an LPL fan, that just makes it all the sweeter. It was such a good series, but to see the patience that we got from JDG, Knight stepping up massively on that international stage, even getting that player of the series, and then as well, just looking at how well they were able to play around Ruler. Like, this is the JDG so many people were hoping to see come to MSI.
Yeah, and when we talk about, because I know I've repeated it ad nauseum on the desk, like, it's all about team fights. It's not just about, like, Guma Yushi versus Ruler, right? It's about how the team plays around it, and that's where I thought Knight and 369 were absolutely stunning in a lot of these team fights. They set up Ruler so well for success, and there you see Knight, like, I'm so happy to see him having this performance on the international stage, because the narrative around him was always, oh, he performs so well domestically, and we've never been able to see that internationally, and now finally seeing it here in London is fantastic.
Yes, indeed. This is the bracket as it plays out. T1 still gets a chance. They get to face the winner of today's match, and then the winner of that will get to face JDG in our final on Sunday. An interesting thing Jad yesterday said on the desk, he said, you know, no, I'm kidding. It was all interesting, but specifically this about the draft, I thought, is that he said that the game was played at such a high level, or the games were played at such a high level, that at pro play you often say, of course, draft matters a lot, but since it's being executed upon differently by each team, it might not matter as much. And he said actually it became full circle and draft started mattering a ton again.
Yeah, and particularly for T1, I think that is a sore topic. There is, of course, also a lot of gameplay elements to talk about. We saw the 4v5 engage, right? And in general, the Nautilus, the Kindred not really working out. But I do think that T1 with specifically this roster over the last 2 years have struggled a lot, and that's why they often get to Game 5s, but then in that Game 5, some of the adaptations that I think we were often expecting don't come through.
And that was one of the big talking points we had. It's traditionally in the finals where it goes wrong in the best of 5. They were 3-0 coming into that series, wherein it wasn't in the finals, but actually having that first loss there does hinder them quite a lot. Like, I gotta say though, JDG, they played outstanding. Like, this wasn't exactly what I think a lot of people were expecting coming in. And even in the games where JDG did end up losing, I think they still looked very, very strong. So I'm really curious now if T1 do manage to run the gauntlet now and get back in the finals. I mean, what a banger of a finals that would be.
Yes, it would indeed. And we will have to see who will end up facing T1. And Gen G is definitely favored today. But BLG's story is one of defying expectations. And they will need to do it again today. Laura caught up with Candace for more insight on the underdogs.
And we're back here at MSI 2023 ahead of BLG versus Gen G. And I have the honor of being joined by Candace, the LPL host. It's the first time we do a segment together, and I'm really, really happy about it. How do you feel about today's game? How are you excited?
I'm very excited of the BLG series against Gen G.
Yeah.
And also we are kind of expecting they can perform and also like prove themselves in this tournament.
Yeah, I can imagine it. I think it's a big surprise for everyone to find BLG here at MSI. Can you talk me through their run, how it was in the LPL, and how did you guys perceive the fact that BLG made it to MSI and defied expectations?
At the very beginning, we're not expecting BLG to maybe get here at MSI at the beginning of the spring season, but they made their miracle run through the second round of the playoffs. They win all the best of 5 series before the spring final and even get JDG into the Game 5, a very intense series. And also, I think the BLG added Coach Tubby to their coaching staff, and also they have the sub-support player, Lu Mao, as their support player sub. So they help them a lot to improve their vision game and also the mentality of the players.
Yeah.
So the resilience that they proved in the playoffs, I think is the best thing they can pull out in the whole playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, 26 games throughout the LPL playoffs, an insane amount of games. And I think it makes sense to talk about the staff because when you look at BLG as a team, they have 2 experienced players. The rest of the team didn't really play on the international stage and are fairly new to prove themselves here. So I think it's really interesting insights that we have here. But I'm just wondering, how did the community react to BLG qualifying? How was it perceived in the LPL?
I think I'm really proud of them because they all work well with each other and also they're really good friends with each other. Like they have really close relationship. They always hanging out together, and also we have a lot of interesting story about the players. They're really happy and also enjoy the life here in London. Also, that really appreciate the chance to practice with the top tier teams among the world.
Yeah. Practice, prove themselves, and we know how much the audience likes an underdog story, and even more when you know like the players like each other behind the scene. I want to talk about one player in particular because we've highlighted a lot of really good profiles within BLG, but I think On in the LPL is one of the fans' favorites. Can you tell me more about this, please?
Because all the audience will like have a meme about him, like very handsome. It's like handsome moves, and not only because he is very handsome, and also he's very creative in the Rift. He always have a really like creative mechanics, and you can see a lot of crazy moves on the map. That's why he got the nickname maybe handsome on in LPL.
On, when you think about it, it's like the only way for him is forward, and the more aggressive, the better it is as a support. Candice, thank you so much for joining me today. Best of luck to BLG
Thank
on
you
the
too.
Rift. And Shocks, back to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was really interesting that she mentioned was the addition of Tabe and Lumao, because we talk about the team, and Candice mentioned how they all get along really well together, and that's one of the driving forces behind their success. But in particular, Lumao was always cited back when he was on JDG with Yagao as a player who was really, really intelligent about the game. His Bard play actually took them to their first ever finals win when he was on JDG in 2020. So I was glad she mentioned some of their support staff as well who are here in London with them.
He also also did famously say, I'm bored, let's go in. So I think that explains a lot about who Honest now as a support player as well.
Yeah, it makes sense indeed.
Sometimes you just get bored, you know? You gotta do something.
And then you gotta go in. Speaking of, let's hope they don't get bored in the draft and they cook up something good for us because it's going to be so important today, as it is every day, but maybe even more so when you're the underdog. So let's welcome Chronic Cookler to the desk, and we'll have a special chef cam.
Yes, I will grab my ingredients. Let me get those ready. What's very important when cooking is that you only prepare the best of ingredients, right? We only want high quality, locally sourced ingredients that make sure that we get a delicious dish here. The goal of this dish, how do you beat Gen G if you're BLG? I'm going to start off with making something very clear. What we got over here, this, I don't know if you can see, this we don't want.
Ooh.
Okay.
Is that spoiled?
This I think we let it go. Okay. This little overpowering, not quite to my taste. Personally, what I would like to see is this. There we go. That is a strong flavor combination. You can start it off. We're going to throw that in our pan.
Okay.
Get going on that. I don't know
what do you think, judges?
All right. So here's the thing. I like this, but only in certain situations. Because while these two ingredients go very well together, they can be a little underwhelming at times. Maybe not enough to fully carry a dish. I will say, BLG did set it up very nicely in their last series.
Is it going to be sushi? Is it going to be raw, or is it going to be cooked?
Well, we're going to cook it. We're going to cook it, right? We even though we have the highest quality of ingredients, I still want to play it safe. Then, secondly, this is our preferred ingredient, but this should not be available. This is very high quality.
Very big trend at the moment.
Should not be seen here
Scarce
today.
at the moment.
Yeah,
also
really
hard
scarce, right? So we're gonna put it to the side. If you can get that, that's better. But as a replacement. Yeah, we got this. Now this is a quality ingredient, and I think most importantly, right, particularly with the dish we're making here today, that is what you need if you really want to create a wholehearted dish that feeds you very, very well.
Also, I just feel like it's something that if you can add a little bit more to, these side dishes with it, it can work out really, really well. The fact that you're able to kind of bring it in as a main dish as well, it just has so much flexibility at times. I like what you're going for here.
Yeah, and then I want to top it off. Finally, a little bit of this. We've got to keep it spicy,
Risky.
So we're going to throw that in there.
Are you going to flip the pan now?
Yeah.
We're going to put it in the oven.
Okay.
We're going to see what comes out.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me very quickly put that in. I'm going to set the timer. Okay, and off we go. And look at that. That is a nice. And just to finish it, what we have here. It's just a little bit of split pushing. Just a little, little sprinkle of split pushing.
Judges, what do you think about this dish for BLG for the win?
I mean, at the moment, I'm really liking what it's going for. I think the idea of being able to get that little sprinkle of spice on the side is going to do a lot for it. I mean, even just the flip that you were talking about, I think is the only thing that's really missing. I want to see a little bit more. I mean, hang on.
Dutch, give it a go. Okay.
Okay. I can see it. I think it's missing a tiny bit, though. I'm not really sure, though. I can't figure it out.
Okay, I didn't want to bring this out. It's the final ingredient.
That'll do it.
Throw it in there.
All right, now we got the late game.
We're there?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. That was great.
No problem.
A creative way to talk about the drafts as well. Oops, I'm just gonna turn this off. Here we go. Yeah, great stuff. I mean, I hope people got the point, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what it's going to be. But maybe our judge should break it down one more time.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think BLG, they can give themselves the tools. I would like to see the one thing that both Rob and I kind of harped on with the jacks, with the little sprinkling of split pushing, is sometimes, Bin will get super far ahead and they don't make the most of their split push pressure, right? They still really try to slam 5v5s. And that's where I think they could maybe look to improve to kind of spread their opponents on the map.
And I do like the idea of Delusion Nami being able to play that aggressive bot side, trying to go up toe-to-toe against something like a Jinx and her Felios, trying to stack dragons, get your game rolling in your favor. But it definitely has backfired at times, and especially when you then become so reliant on these mid-game fights where BLG have misplayed, I think it's going to be a bit of a flip, but I really do think it's probably your best angle, because if you go Jinx Aphelios, it just feels like you're never going to match the Gen G in the late game.
Might be very difficult. Also, shout out to Eat to the Beat, who caters for us every day. That was delicious. It was a 3-cheese tortellini. It was fantastic.
It was
so
great.
thank you for keeping us fed every day.
Primer did not make that himself? Wow.
What? Okay, let's move on.
What do you mean? He spent hours on it. What gives? Don't call me out.
So let's see who the fans predicted to win in our MasterCard fan predictions. And, it's a convincing one.
Yeah.
Gen G 76.1, BLG 23.9. And there's a lot of BLG fans. They are not happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw BLG go up against JDG, and even though we have talked about how sometimes they have looked surprisingly good in some of those matchups, especially earlier on in the LPL playoffs, I think at this point, Gen G are a very similar team to JDG, so I think BLG will have some similar issues going up against them.
Yeah, the similarities between Gen G and JDG speak for themselves. I think additionally, we've seen that specifically of all the teams we have in the LCK, Gen G are the best at playing from a deficit, right? And I think BLG's early game and their individual play, particularly Bin versus Doran, should be very BLG favored. But when it comes to actually keeping it clean, they have not been the best team, both domestically and here at MSI. And that is something that I don't think you can really afford against Gen G.
I also think it's just a case of the style that we saw domestically from them is very different from what we're now seeing at MSI, which was, hey, look, let's get Jaxes, let's get split pushers, we'll stick Galio and Veigar in the mid lane, play a little bit more of it. We will support Bin in whatever he wants to do. That just doesn't really work at MSI anymore, and it just feels like they're kind of getting washed out.
And it probably explains the fan vote. And remember that each day you can head over to Twitter and vote at MasterCard Nexus is the @ to participate. 2 days left, you got to get your vote in. So one of BLG's angles of attack will be in the bot lane, where Elk and Peyz are facing off in our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz.
Today's featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz has two players with very different stories facing up against each other. Peyz is the youngest bot laner ever to win an LCK championship, starting off his career with immediate success, even receiving the finals MVP award.
Faker now gets into position as they dive on the point. They look for Gumayushi and they manage to take down the Aphelios. Now Peyz dodging everything. And Gen G just destroy them.
In contrast, we have Elk, who has fought to recover after struggling for the past few years and is now demonstrating that he still possesses that spark of brilliance.
Would be the start of a perfect fight. Elk waiting over the wall, then Italy stealing it. Elk untouched. And it's time for the Aphelios to shine, but it is Giga Bin to the back line, finding a way to make it work. JDG overstep and they will be punished. BLG come alive here in the third game.
This bout is between a young, promising rookie and an experienced veteran seeking atonement for his first ever international tournament.
Well, different trajectories in terms... I gotta put my mic down. Wait, I'm a rookie at this job. I don't know what you guys... anyways, in terms of Peyz versus Alka, two different trajectories, or different points, I should say, in their careers. And for Peyz, it is so incredible that he's only 17 years old, and he is taking on all this pressure, right?
Yeah, he joined Gen G Academy when he was only 14, and then he debuted in LCK Challengers. And I get excited a lot about Challenger players. I have a tendency to kind of run away and like, oh, this guy's gonna smash the LCK. And in his case, in his first year, 2 Pentacles, a Quadra in his first week of Challenger Summer, then promoted to Gen G in 2023 to replace Ruler. But even me, one of the biggest Challenger like fanboys and advocates, I thought he was gonna need time, right? We see so often players do well in Challengers, but then when the level rises, it gets hard, let alone when you're following up Ruler, one of the best AD carries of all time, and then he ends up being the LCK champion in his rookie season, the youngest Royal Roader since FLICKR. Insane. Or rather, FLICKR is still younger than him, but only by a month. And the fact that that hasn't happened for so long really speaks to the quality and talent of this player.
Yeah, and I mean, by contrast, you then have Elk, right, who's going up against him in the bot lane, and he has a very different story, because I feel like we've brought this up before, but Elk as Chomong was kind of looked at as like, okay, he's not been coming AD carry, he's really, really good with WE, he nearly made it to international competition several times, and it was kind of, people were waiting to see when he would have his breakthrough moment, and then coming onto BLG, people were already like, okay, maybe his time has passed, right? Maybe he's just too inconsistent, he He is not a consistent enough carry to be the main focal point of a team. And at MSI in particular, he has absolutely proved all of those doubts wrong. Like, he is the main carry, or he has been the main carry on this team as they have flexed into a more hyper carry bot meta, and he's performed very admirably.
Yeah, and just on Emily's points there, like, so many people, we called it Jomung madness back in the LPL in 2020, where he would just have these moments where he'd go way too aggressive, would come back and backfire. You'd even have a joke that Morgan, his top laner, couldn't TP back to lane because he had to use a bot lane to save Jomung at the time. But I think it's kind of given him...
Which was his nickname, just for people who don't know.
Yeah, at the time
then,
was Jomung, yeah. But it was... it's incredible to see how he has grown from that, and especially just overcome how much doubt there was. Because as Emily was hinting at, there was nobody really believed that he would step up to be one of the greatest AD carries in the LPL. There was too many inconsistencies. We weren't getting the performances that people expected on when the chips were down. But now you're starting to see that BLG running from 5th place all the way through to the LPL, all the way to the finals to get them here to MSI. A huge amount is on the shoulders of Elk.
And I think the key here is starting to see, because when we look at the other ADCs in this tournament, some of the likes of a Ruler who has played incredibly the whole way, you do see that there's still, of course, room to grow, and why wouldn't there be in contrast to him? So I'd love to know how, if you look at them pound for pound so far, and some of the mistakes, of course, that were sprinkled in, but also the way they have adjusted to the tournament meta, where do you see them, or how do you see them matching up today?
It's so hard, particularly with AD carries, because as we've been going on and on about, it's not just about the 1v1 matchup, right? AD carry always is going to be very reliant on supports, which makes that conversation kind of muddied. But when it comes to specifically playing around bot laners, Gen G have been doing that for like 5-6 years now, because they've had Ruler the whole time, right? And even in metas where that wasn't necessarily the point, they have been working around it. And with this particular lineup, most notably the top half of the map, it was also the first time, like, playing fully around Ruler in the Zeri meta last year, where they were able to get a victory and an LCK win for the first time in such a long time. And when we look at BLG, I think that the rest of the team has not been able to really play around Elk nearly as much.
I know we always start from the bot lane, but then we can, across this matchup, also look at some things that might matter more in this matchup than the others. And let's start in the jungle with Peanut and the influence that he's going to have also on that bot lane.
Yeah, this is also about bot lane, but it's also about jungle pathing. So everyone knows how much I just love talking about jungle pathing. So here, this is from the C9 series, and what you're gonna see is that Peanut's gonna start off at Birds. He's actually gonna go in for an invade, take enemy blue Gromp, and then go to his own red, go to Wolves, get bot side Scuttle, go to blue, go to Gromp, back, get Sheen, and then do another invade to set up for a bot side dive. And the most important thing as we talk through and we see Peanut go through this path is that A, he's going up against the Kha'Zix, so he does want to stop Kha'Zix from kind of power farming to level 6, where he's going to be joining up in teamfights and skirmishes. But then additionally, Peanut is a player who has evolved so much since I saw him first play, I believe in 2015, in that he is been lauded by his teammates and Gen G staff for being so vocal and so communicative with his lanes. He knows the game so well. And against BLG, I do think this is a great advantage for Gen G specifically, because we're going to see here as they're setting up for this bot dive. This was the invade I was talking about. And he'll be able to set up because, as you see, Peyz and Delight are a little low, but they're going to set up in this tri-brush, and then they're going to come down for kills onto... I'm draw a little skull and crossbones there. We're going to do a little art. Onto Sven to set up that bot lane. And I think the big thing that I want to stress here is that A, Peanut can have some really, really intelligent early game pathing, and B, this is actually a place where we've seen, even when BLG have tried to focus this through Xun, I remember a really strong Nidalee performance that he actually had, and as a champion he's super comfortable on. He did end up trying to set up for the bot lane, but his opponent actually ended up exerting more bot lane pressure because I believe it was Kanavi, who was just constantly in bot. So even though he set Kanavi behind individually, Kanavi still exerted more pressure in the bot lane. So it's not just about where he's going, but how he's communicating with lanes, how they're setting up for these waves, where they're recognizing when they can dive. And that is where I think Peanut has just evolved into such an intelligent player for Gen G.
And I think it also ties into Chovy, right? And that's not even specifically going into Yagao, but Chovy, as a player, has been known for his laning dominance ever since he burst onto the scene. And Peanut specifically has been able so consistently to make use of the space and the pressure that Chovy provides, because he's swapped it up a little bit, right? He's been a little bit more active, but for the longest time, all Chovy would guarantee was mid-prio in every single matchup, every single lane, all of the time. And Peanut has found very creative ways, either aggressively early or in team fights, to make use of that.
Yeah, and I think on the opposite side, it's kind of that's the big difference maker for me. Even though Yagao played with Kanavi on JDG and we would see him work quite a bit with Kanavi, we haven't quite seen that same sync up between Shun and Yagao at times. Shun will try and over push his advantages where he doesn't have that support from the mid lane, end up giving over a bunch of kills, or on the flip side, you just end up in a position where they're not really functioning through that mid jungle. So I think this is going to be a big test for Shun specifically, as how can he operate in this mid jungle matchup? Can he get that advantage? Can he stop that creative pathing that's going to come through from Peanut and make sure that BLG can get through that early game unscathed?
Yeah, formidable mid-jungle matchup coming out of Gen G. And as we've said so many times, it does all come down to those team fights. And BLG is, as you used the word flip, I believe, in rehearsal, a team that can approach these differently depending on when they do it.
Yeah, sometimes they look absolutely fantastic and they're able to set up great for Elk, especially when you have things like a good flanking position for Bin. Yagao and something like the Ari where he can try and step forward and get these key charms. And as long as they're able to position themselves with Elk firing up and free firing this entire time, they're in a good spot. But the biggest problem is when it starts to come back around and they just lack that patience. They're either trying to engage too quickly, whether it be from On or from Bin, or they just don't give Elk a really good spot to actually start to fire, and he can be in trouble from these backlines. As you can see in this fight here, it makes it kind of a little bit more difficult for him to get the damage that he needs off.
Yeah, sometimes BLGs are kind of their own worst enemy, as here they try to hard force their way through a Brom, through a Cassante, and it ends up backfiring immensely.
Yeah, and here we see, I mean, kind of the most obvious example of that at this tournament that everyone's going to remember. And I think that is why, again, we have seen BLG take really creative angles to fights, and then we have seen them be a little bit overconfident and a little bit over-aggressive and get punished, as we see here. And I think, again, against a team like Gen G, I cannot stress enough how much they are willing to mitigate if you're just constantly throwing early pressure at them. We saw it when they were playing against T1 and they won that. And then turn it back as soon as you make a mistake. They will pounce and out-team fight you.
Especially when you look towards what Bin has started to teeter over towards, which is a lot more of these Scions and tanks and stuff like that. You need to be taking it slow as BLG. You need to be setting up correctly, because I do think they should go back towards the style of having played Jackson, these kind of things. But if you are going to go that style, particularly like we've seen from Bin after the finals against JDG, you need to make sure you're setting things up correctly.
That's why I'm actually kind of curious if they might. Well, like, he's hovered it, and I know it's probably just because it's one of his favorite champions, but I would be curious to see if in any way they see an opening for the Camille, because I like her a lot better as someone who has split push pressure, but also has an insane 5v5 presence.
Well, speaking of the top lane battle, let's hear from Doran about putting his international struggles to bed ahead of today's series versus BLG.
1, 2세트 같은 경우는 그냥 탱커 대 탱커 싸움에서 구도대로 흘러갔다고 생각하고 3세트 같은 경우에는 캐넨 상대로 초반에 많이 힘들었어서 되게 공격적으로 캐넨이란 챔피언의 스타일을 잘 살려서 플레이 하셨다고 생각합니다. 저희가 경기가 많이 남아 있긴 하지만 그래도 한 번이라도 지면 끝이기 때문에 저희도 최선으로 준비하고 전력을 다해서 경기했습니다. 냉정하게 이번 MSI에서는 저희가 리그 내에서 보여줬던 좋은 모습만큼은 잘 안 나왔다 생각해서 평가는 좋은 평가라서 고맙긴 하지만 아직 더 저희 팀에게 엄격해질 필요가 있는 것 같고요. 좀 더 잘해야 된다고 생각합니다. 좀 항상 번번이 국제대회에서 좀 솔직히 아쉽지도 않게 계속 탈락하는 모습이 보여서 이게 그때마다 많이 실망했는데 이번에는 그런 실수 또 하지 않게 진짜 남은 기간 최선을 다해서 잘 준비할 생각입니다.
a really subdued clip there out of Doran, and I think he gives the context rather himself, Chronicler, because despite being the LCK champions, one of the hardest to get titles in the world, it is making that mark on the international scene that stays important.
Yeah, and for Doran individually as well, is such an interesting player. He can go from being the rock, like in game number 1 and 2 against T1 in the domestic finals, where he legitimately 1v9 on his Gragas, took the team on his back, to then dying solo against the Sion, right? This player is just such an enigma, and particularly internationally, he's so emotional. You can see, you know, Chovy, Peyz, no emotion. But Doran, after a solo kill, he'll put his hands in his head and be like, oh, how could that happen to me? And usually, it's because he went in.
Yes, and this is why there might be a big opening for BLG today in that top lane. We had a special graphic made to support our claims.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Okay. All right, so this is because, for people that don't get the joke, it is because Bin, a lot of people, I was wondering how he was learning English, and a bunch of LPL fans tweeted at me that he watches a lot of WWE, so this is like, in Bin's mind, this is the ideal scenario.
This is how it should go, maybe.
Yeah, this is the series you're going to remember where Bin threw Doran off a hell of a cell and he plummeted 16 feet into a caster desk. I really hope so, because honestly, it's been a bit back and forth. I do love the dichotomy we're seeing, though, between Bin, who's like, I'm going to beat Doran, I'm going to go mid, and I'm going to beat Chovy, and then I'm going to like do everything. And then you have Doran, who's very much the opposite. But I really do think going back towards these more carry-orientated picks, like the Jax, I would love a Camille Galio game. I think it'd be so sick to see. Just give him the resources to try and punish that topside matchup and actually bring a bit of bedlam to this series.
Yeah, I mean, as we try to summarize everything that I've heard in this countdown, there's a lot, and I think there's a lot up in the air, and I think so much has to do with the fact that there's so much pressure. This is an elimination match again, and Bilibili have been able to defy expectations time and time again. Something tells me this will be the hardest mountain to climb for them the whole day, and we'll see. I believe you have a lot of faith in your Gen G brethren, and for good reason.
Of course I do. They're going to smash it. 3-0, 3-1, maybe.
You get to game 3, they're like up 2-0, and then you get to game 3.
That's the risky one.
That's the one that we're looking at. Doran also tends to int a little bit in game 3s, but we'll see what happens. It's time to find out which team advances to face T1 tomorrow, and which will go home empty-handed in 4th place.
Welcome back, everybody. It's MSI 2023, and it's time for our next elimination matchup. Gen G and BLG, one best of 5 to see who gets to go forward to play against T1 and who gets to watch the rest from home. I'm Captain Flowers, joined by Azael and Vedius. Gentlemen, I'm hoping today's series brings the same amount of heat that we got to see yesterday between China and Korea.
Yesterday, I was surprised by JDG's measured and controlled gameplay when they went up against T1. Because when we saw them play against BLG, it was fighting. And BLG is the type of team that around objectives, they do not want to concede that space. So let's see if Gen G can go toe-to-toe with the LPL powerhouse that is BLG.
Going to be really interesting to see what the first draft is here. We were just talking about this, and I do feel for BLG, it's such a priority to get a strong team fighting top, you know, a carry for Bin, and to also, you know, really mitigate the strength of Dora and potentially taking away something like the Gragas, I think could be big. I think picks for Bin that are going to be really important are things like the Kennen as well as the Gwen. So I am interested to see, is Gen G going to ban away the Kennen here or potentially the Rakan? Because the other one could definitely be getting picked.
Well, we see the Jinx banned away, so if
Aphelios
is not, then Aphelios being first pick would be my expectation. It's Jinx, Cassante, and Ahri banned out by BLG. Gen G banning out the Annie, the Nautilus, the Lucian, but Maokai is first picked by BLG instead. Aphelios still open.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So now there is that possibility of the Aphelios being grabbed up, but that tells me that BLG are happy to play the Xayah Rakan or potentially even something like a Zeri Lulu, both of which are available. But Xayah going to be grabbed up, so Aphelios passed up by Gen G as well.
I mean, when we look at the picks played by Elk so far in the tournament, 6 on Aphelios, 4 on Lucian and Jinx, and 1 on Xayah. So if you expect him to play anything, it would have to be that Aphelios here based on what we've seen so far. But yes, the Xayah Rakan duo locked in for Gen G. We know the bottom lane there, a Lulu being locked in. I'm really thinking it's Aphelios here, boys.
Yeah. But
hang on a second.
Zeri is okay. It's just going to get locked.
That's why I'm not the draft expert. We got Zeri and Lulu locked in over for BLG.
So this is a bit of a shift, but when we look at Elk's performance, especially in the playoffs, Zeri was something he had a lot of success on, something that he's very comfortable with. After seeing the Zaya Rakan, Gen.G very clearly prepared and ready for the Aphelios, and they've just said, you know what, we want something with a little bit more mobility and a little bit more dueling prowess.
Yeah, we've seen a few teams actually go towards this, preferring things like the Zeri Lulu against the Zaya Rakan, having that dash on the Zeri, having that mobility, as you're saying, Betty, is to try to avoid this Rakan engage, but the Vi going to get locked in as well, so a lot of power picks up and available in this draft. Now will there be a bit more targeting towards some of these picks we were talking about, things in the top lane, the Jace, the Rumble, obviously a flex, could be mid, could be top, could be jungle. That's going to get banned out, but I'm so curious to see if Doran will have his Gragas available here later on in the draft. It would be a great pairing, especially with the dive they've already drafted, and if Kennen and Gwen are going to make it through.
Yep, lots of focus on the solo lanes here, with both sides having already drafted the bottom lane duos and the junglers together. Gnar, the final ban of the draft for Gen.G, targeting Bin, looking towards that top side. Does BLG also want to continue with more top focus? You've pointed out the Gragas, absolutely a huge factor there for Doran and the entirety of Gen.G if they can get that pick online. No, the Kennen banned away instead. This is a pretty common ban against BLG themselves, but they're respecting the possibility of Gen.G pulling it out too.
Yeah, I think that right now, if you're Gen.G, you have to make the choice of whether you blind pick something safe in the top side of the map. We already talked about the Gragas, maybe that is the direction. Sion is also up and available if they just want that front line, but the beauty of the Gragas is it can be flexed as well. You can put it in both mid and top right, and so there is a lot of room for either Doran to potentially get the counter pick, or maybe they just want to make sure that Doran gets something that he's comfortable and safe on.
I mean, I think it's his best champion by far. You can go AP, you can go tank, you can do a lot of different builds, you can flex it around, as you said. So I think it's a really strong option here. Renekton would be something that we saw a lot in regional play, but not something we've seen much here. I'm much more a fan of the Gwen. The Jax is obviously Bin's signature pick, and the crowd loves it.
Yeah.
But I haven't really loved his Jax here at MSI. It feels like even if he can get individual leads, he's really struggling to transition those to the team fights, because Jax is just not nearly as strong of a team fighter. It's not as easy to transition as some of these other top lane picks. Also, Jax is a pretty tough matchup into the Gragas. You know, the Gragas is something that a lot of people actually like as a counter pick or an answer into the Jax in solo queue. So we'll see how Bin is going to be able to really circumvent that, because this is one where you can get poked out very, very easily. You almost always will see Comet Gragas. Jax does not have a lot of sustain, so you can kind of just utilize your passive poke and prod, and the Jax needs to play really aggressively and constantly reset the wave and get bases, or you're just going to get kind of whittled down.
Well, we do have Talia locked in. Final pick here in this first draft for the side of BLG. Response from Gen.G is Lissandra. Some of that point and click lockdown. Again, always very desirable against a champion like Zeri, who is so fast. The point and click of Vi, the point and click of the Lissandra there, being able to guarantee they can lock this down. But the mobility of Talia on the other side, combined with the long range of the Maokai ulti, I'm looking at BLG to create these massive zones with the wall and the Nature's Grasp together to set up the fights they need.
Well, I think that BLG have not drafted anything unconventional for what we know BLG for, right? As you highlighted, there's a lot of comfort picks on their side, and I think one of the beauties of their composition is that they have a lot of range at their disposal. Zeri plus Talia, a lot amount of poke, like they can play at range, they can leverage the fact that they can chip away, and they have a lot of zone control, as you also highlighted, Flower. So contesting objectives, play around these neutrals is where I expect to see BLG be the most action-packed. And as we said at the start of this series, BLG versus JDG was a bloodbath. Dragons, Heralds, Barons, every single neutral BLG would look to fight for, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that against Gen.G. But they have a lot of dive threat. They have a lot of great ways to access the backline and threaten onto Elk. So the question is, can BLG keep their AD carry alive?
Well, my question for you guys is, who won the draft? Who are we giving the edge to here now that we've seen all 10 champions about to hit the Rift?
I mean, honestly, I like Gen.G's draft a lot more. I think it's just straight up. They're looking for a 5v5. I think it's very difficult to transition the Jax to that 5v5. You know, BLG have drafted something that wants to play more around side lanes. You have the Talia, you have the Jax, kind of have to create pressure there, and that has not been the MSI meta. I'll be impressed if they can really make it happen. But Gen.G's comp is just so straightforward. All these forms of engage, dive onto the back line, look for 5v5s.
Let's do it. We're on to Summoner's Rift for the first time today in this best of 5. BLG on blue side, Gen.G on red. Elimination matches only from this point forward.
A lot of support for BLG. We saw that same level of support for JDG yesterday. A lot of LPL fans in the house today. Obviously, expectations coming into this series are that Gen G are the favorites. First seed from the LCK. Doran himself said in an interview before we got into this match that he felt that Gen G wasn't performing at the level that they were domestically. And remember that they clean sweeped Cloud9 in what was an incredible performance from them. Flawless macro, incredible map movements, and just clinical execution of gameplay. Whereas BLG...
the dagger.
Sorry.
Execution is the key word in that sentence.
I apologize, gentlemen. I apologize.
Obliterated, devastated, demolished,
I mean,
crushed,
BLG did the same to
embarrassed.
G2. Okay, BLG, they made fun of G2 in the way in which that they outfought them in the fights. They were able to claw back an impressive deficit in Game 3. And while we do see some what I call elk plays, you know, reminiscent of other AD carries in the LPL, the Jackie Love, as some would call, they were still able to come out on top. And again, I think that their team fighting is something that you can't afford to underestimate. And that really has been the name of the tournament, right? The best team fighting teams are here. The top 4 are 4 of the best team fighting teams at this tournament. And I'm excited to see what they can bring out in the 5v5s.
And it's just so interesting because BLG is the only team it feels like that bucks the trend a little bit, you know, where they are doing much more of this carry top stuff. They do have more of that kind of flair, their own different style, where a lot of the other top laners have been moving towards the Scions and the Orns, and we're seeing Gragas and all these things that are more traditionally just frontline and peel and team fighting.
And the other thing I'm looking at when we're talking about this top 4 and how all these teams stack up, one of the big standouts for BLG, not in the direction they would hope for, is when everybody is evaluating these mid laners, Yagal's the one that is often perceived as lagging behind the other 3. And although he does have some clutch moments like we saw in that series against G2 where he gets the flash Ahri charm and ends up winning that game for them, he's still often not competing on that same level that the other mids are. So particularly in this series, going up against a guy like Chovy, who consistently gaps his opponents, who very rarely dies, who is constantly the X factor in his games, I'm gonna need to see Yagal really step up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's not known as the individual that necessarily takes over a game, but he's a great facilitator. And I think a pick like Talia really does kind of suit his style, where he can just push out mid, can look to move towards the sides. And you can see Ben getting very aggressive here. And this is how you have to play this matchup. If you do sit back at all and you allow the Gragas to dictate the pace, he just has way more sustain than you. You're going to get whittled down. You're going to get chunked out. So you have to use your HP and your mana to just hard shove the wave and to force him into these situations where you now have time to reset. So Doran is trying to obviously... well, he was setting up a little bit of a freeze. Of course, it is just going to slow push out now. But Ben, you know, utilizes the last of his health, last of his mana to get back, and will have the option to save his TP if he wants. Whereas Doran definitely going to have to TP to be able to answer this.
Obviously, full clears from both junglers. Shen making his way down bot. Stacked wave, they're looking for the dive.
All right, let's see it. Remember, Maokai can drop the aggro if he needs to, but it's not even going to be the point. They engage. The dive goes out, but they don't have the damage. Shun is low. Elk is low, but he's got the first blood, and they take down Peyz. It's BLG first to strike.
Nice dive there. Peyz almost outplaying. He was dodging around, trying to keep the minions between him and Elk, trying to block a lot of those Zeri Qs, but Elk just barely had the damage to finish him off. A really aggressive play here on this bot side for BLG, and it pays off big time as it's first blood onto the Zeri. And look at the CS difference. That is multiple waves that are going to be denied. He will lose the cannon as well. He'll be able to get the rest of the range minions, but that puts Peyz way down.
Yeah, really nice setup overall from BLG. Calm, calculated. Jun skips the Scuttle Crab to make this dive happen. And let's keep our eyes on Elk in this play, because Peyz was not going down as quickly as I was expecting him to. That initial Q does miss. Then the flash away. And then those minions, as you are highlighting, as well, just getting in the way makes it so much harder for Elk to be able to finally get that execute.
He's trying to play a little bit of ring around the rosy there with the minions.
Peyz really bought a lot of time in that dive. And it almost went awry, but still, BLG walk away with a kill. They have themselves an only gold lead, and as you said, Azael, a lot of that advantage now between the two AD carries.
Well, and that's just massive for them as well. When you take into consideration, it was a call start. First blood goes on the Zeri. Like, everything goes their way. They deny the wave. Yes, the minions are going to equalize a little bit as this pushes out, but there's obviously a lot more there for Elk to farm. And he is really how BLG wins games. You know, Bin is a big star on the top lane and is a really flashy player, but the way that they won games in the LPL was largely around Elk. He had a monstrous percentage of the team's damage, one of the highest of any teams here. So they really do depend on him in those 5v5s, and he's in a great spot to succeed.
And we've seen some of the Elk plays, signature of some of the more wild shoot from the hip type of stuff that you were talking about earlier from LPL stars in the past, Vedius. But at the same time, when this guy is zeroed in, when he's in that zone, you know how effective he can be. You know you can depend on him to win these fights. And especially with what you were talking about earlier, Azael, Yagao being a facilitator, being able to also go down there and help this guy out, get those bottom lane leads rolling. That could be huge if Elk can maintain this lead. Dorian going to shove Bin back up in the top side. Meanwhile, mid, it's Chovy under pressure. Shun and Yagao finding some damage, but now things are going to turn around as Chovy applies the ulti, and Shun's in trouble with a flash follow-up coming out from Peanut. Shun down to 100 HP. He's taken out, and Chovy's the one getting him there. Gen G find one, but now they got to be careful because Elk and On have made their way into the scrap too. Gen G disengage and tie the game up 1-1.
Bot laners get involved in the mid lane as we see a bit of a skirmish between the junglers. A nice collapse from Gen G, recognizing that Jun does not have flash available, and there's little that he can do to escape from this relentless crowd control that was coming out from Gen G. Good target focus, but BLG, they're not done yet.
Yeah, Yagao rides the wall in, and Peanut's going to be the target. Remember, he already used the flash to make the play in mid, and Elk gets the punish thanks to the Weaver's wall, and those stones making it so he could not get away without stunning himself on the exit. Beautiful setup from BLG. They get the money on the carry. They invade the enemy jungle. They steal away the blue. Nice punch back after the mid lane death.
And it's that flash trade that you talked about, Flowers. Jun, the fact that he didn't have flash is what allowed Gen G to make that initial play in mid, but BLG didn't slow down their aggression, knowing that Peanut's flash wasn't available. They punish him as well. Very impressive aggression coming out from BLG. They decide, though, that the Dragon is a step too far.
Yeah, and Elk is just getting everything here. I mean, the Dragon would have been risky as Chovy did have the push in mid, so definitely could have made the collapse very easily, but Elk gets the blue buff, he gets both the kills. He is getting paid in the early game.
So if we look at losses for Gen G in the LCK in spring, there's two things that were usually a factor when this team would lose, and that's Peyz being behind and Peanut dying a lot. Right now, BLG has done their research, and they are checking those boxes. They set Peanut back with an early death. Peyz is behind in terms of the matchup in the bottom lane, so BLG are coming into this with a game plan, and that game plan, unfortunately, does not include taking the Drake. That goes over the way of Gen G. Chovy also grabs a plate mid to make sure Gen G don't fall too far behind.
And just overall good awareness there from Gen G. Peanut recognizing, oh, Chovy forced the flash away, saw that Jun collapse was real, and props to Jun being very present on the map, keeping up with the Vi in terms of farm. Does, of course, have the level 6, will lose his red buff, but in exchange, he will start off the Herald.
And they know Chovy has no TP, so with Chovy actually being pushed back, he's going to cancel his base, but he can't actually come to really answer at this Herald. Elk, though, this is risky because On has actually moved up towards Herald. Yeah. Elk is here on his own. You got to be hugging the bottom of this lane. You could be in trouble, potentially.
He does have the ulti available on the Zeri, immediately popping that one. The Xayah goes up into the air. Peanut and Peyz get it done. Peanut's going to get away before that last turret shot fires off. Gen G gets some vengeance here in the bottom lane.
Yeah, Elk tries to outplay it, but it was always going to be Peanut who actually took aggro. I think if he focused Peanut, it's a 1-for-1. In that situation, he's trying to fire in on Peyz, who's the squishier target, but the tower is on the jungler, and I think he actually could have got the 1-for-1 if he played that just a little bit differently.
I also just have to give credit to Gen G. They realized that they were behind in tempo, especially after securing the Drake. Peanut decided to commit to the red buff. So rather than just rotating out, acting as spectators onto the objective, they cross-map. They know that Elk has a massive shutdown. They know that the best way for them to get more gold back is to actually find this pick. And by showing Delight in mid, that gave Elk the confidence that, oh, they're actually looking to contest as a Herald, which then lowered his guard, and they were able to find a pick. So Gen G closing the gold gap ever so slightly.
Gotta say, been doing really well in this 1v1 up on top side so far. He's gotten a plate. He's up 20 plus CS, doing very, very well in what can be a really tough matchup into the Gragas. So, you know, showing again his prowess in these 1v1s. So many top laners are incredibly complimentary of Bin's laning phase, talking about how he is the toughest top laner to actually lane against in that 1v1. And this is his signature pick, so clearly comfortable, regardless of the matchup, to pick it.
And now that he's gone ahead and done his recall, it'll be Elk marching up here into the top side. He'll catch this next wave as Bin goes bottom and Shun fires off the Maokai ultimate here. Nature's Grasp not going to hit any meaningful target. BLG do use it to, of course, take control over the top side river, so they'll grab the Scuttle Crab there. Gold's still dead even between the teams right now, so the next few actions going to be pretty important for either side to try to get an advantage.
Yeah, I think Shun is probably just going to try to drop Herald top. I mean, they swapped their bot lane up towards top. They already took a turret play off that. Shun has grabbed the Herald, so they're just going to look to continue putting more gold in the pocket of Elk here. You can see that Genji's trying to answer this, though. The bot lane is coming out on the minimap, walking up to try to answer that top lane push. A couple plates are going to be gone, though.
Yep, good use of the Zeri Zap as well there from Elk to hit Doran through the turret, make sure that they interrupt that back teleport now being used by the big man in the top lane for Gen G to get him down to the bottom side and deal with Ben.
Exactly, because they actually interrupt that base, he has to just TP straight down or he's going to lose plates and he's going to lose the full wave, so he doesn't actually get to base before he goes down and will now just have to immediately recall. Bin knows he's in a little bit of a risky spot, is just going to TP out towards top. And just swap it back. So they're just swapping their bot lane back towards bot. They're just going to keep moving this map around, trying to take advantage of the wave states. They know that Doran doesn't have his TP and hasn't based, so BLG just shoved their bot lane straight back towards bot. They're going to be able to catch that, and Doran's going to be in this awkward spot where he's going to have to base and potentially lose tempo.
Yeah, I wonder if BLG are just very concerned about, after Delight being level 7, Peanut being level 7, the dive and the threat is now very real. Elk's cleanse will be coming up relatively soon, but I guess that right now their main priority is just to prevent Elk from being attacked at all costs. And the best way to do that is to create this, well, cross-map situation where Bin is the one left isolated and Jun is the one covering in now, knowing that the potential dive is there.
Look at the bot lane, though. It's probably going to be a free play for Elk because of the movements that they've had. The delay on the base from Doran really actually cost him quite a lot because he had to TP straight from top to bot instead of basing first. He would have been able to hang around. In this case, he's not. He loses almost that entire wave and loses a plate. So Elk is just getting paid even more. Now cashes out his call, so he's going to have Shilbo on base. And BLG are playing the map really, really well. And this is one of those things that I expected Gen G to really kind of have the edge in.
And this is one of those things that I think you guys were talking about earlier back in the draft, back at the start of the game. If you're coming into a matchup where most people are favoring your opponent, the pressure is now on you to make things more chaotic, make things more unpredictable, and make decisions that it's going to be harder for your opponents to react to. It seems like BLG made sure they did their homework.
The problem for BLG right now is that Elk did use his ultimate in the bot lane skirmish, and with the dragon spawning in, well, 2 seconds, he's not going to have that available. Of course, Doran doesn't have his ultimate available either, but by sending Chovy top, ideally for Gen G, he's able to get closer to that level 11, has the TP to come and contest. But I don't think Gen G need to force this fight. It's a matter of if they're concerned about, well, Zeri in the late game is only going to get harder for us to deal with. We want to be able to leverage our power spike now. But with the shield bow completed for Zeri, Gen G may just turn back and say, you know what, we don't have the itemization to fight right now. We'll just have to concede this.
Yeah, and I think especially, you know, when you're going up against Talia and Maokai, if you're not first to the dragon, it's difficult to enter. You're walking through saplings, you're walking through these corridors where Talia is going to be just harassing you at every turn. Gen G, though, are trying to poke and prod here, seeing if they can get into position. Here comes a TP from Chovy. It's going to be that bot lane tower.
Yep, Chovy had to TP to it. Remember, the teleport was not unleashed just yet, so he does have to still walk his way over here a little bit. Doran goes in. The dragon's going to be claimed by Shun on the side of BLG. Delight is taken low, but he gets himself back out, but it's Peanut under pressure. It's Peanut down, and Doran's not going to be able to secure a kill into Elk back. Meanwhile, Peyz goes up into the air. The feathers fly, but Gen G has to run. Elk surfs over the wall. Zap! And he grabs a second kill plus the Drake in the fight for BLG.
Nicely done by BLG. No ultimate, no problem for Elk. He does have the sums. He's able to survive. BLG get the dragon and are able to actually win the fight as well here. Nicely done by Yagao, really making it difficult for Peanut to enter.
Oh, Bin thought he might have been able to grab the kill on Peyz, but unfortunately for him, it's close, but not enough. Gen G get one back.
A bit of an overstep there from Bin. In the 2v1, he will lose his life, but I have to question Gen G's contest there. It was BLG that was first the objective. You talk so much, Azale, about how it can be difficult to approach. Gen G do find a way in. The Talia W is very effective, but then you can see all three just rooted up by the Maokai, and then Jun secures this objective, and now the fight is on 2 fronts. Doran and Chovy try to get onto the backline. Elk repositions. Delight's engage onto Elk is good, but the damage from Peanut isn't enough. He's able to flash away to the safety of On. They then find a solo kill, well, an isolated kill, I should say, onto Doran, as the rest of Gen G are forced to retreat after losing their jungler. The whole exchange was just very difficult for Gen G to play, and BLG could just leverage their mobility to play the fight in their favor.
I mean, Yagao just kind of made it a nightmare for Peanut. He couldn't even get in range to actually look for a smite. He's just getting harassed by this Taliyah the whole way. And Elk was pretty far back in that pit, so it's difficult, even with the Vi ult coming in, to be able to have any sort of follow-up. You know, Peyz is a mile away. Chovy is a mile away. They couldn't really get back in on this Zeri. And it is, again, back to live and BLG on this Herald.
I mean, the gold does look quite close. Hang on, there will definitely be a fight here. Shun.
They go in, they want to find Doran here at the very beginning. They lock him down, but they can't quite kill him just yet. BLG pop the top laner, and Gen G are stuck in a 4v5. They got to disengage. The Herald resets, and BLG are still looking for a little bit more here. Chovy using the claw to reposition himself back into mid lane with his AD carry, with his support. Clearing out some of the waves. BLG sending Bin and Shun back to the Rift Herald pit, back to the objective. Gen G and Peanut still hanging around. Smite available on both junglers. Chovy goes over the wall, here with a claw, looking to find his way in here. Yagao throwing out a little bit of damage. Seismic shove back onto Chovy, who already used the ult aggressively. Chovy's in danger. Elk is popping off. He's not going to grab the damage, and Peyz goes in. Elk kills him instead. 80 carries traded back and forth, but Gen G are struggling here in the fight. BLG turning it right back around. Supportal combat goes the way of On, and BLG trade 2 for 2. And get the objective.
What a scrappy fight back and forth here between Gen G and BLG. It looked like Elk was going to get burst down, but with his dying breath takes down Peyz. Then Delight finishes him off, and then it's a 1v1 between the supports. Well, there's chaos on the other side as well between the top laner and jungler. You can see Chovy here gets flipped in. Elk just lets it rip, pops the ulti, flies forward, trying to finish him off. And then here, I thought Peyz was going to be able to actually find the kill, but he used his ulti after using his E, so he didn't actually have the cooldown there to pull the feathers through and get the initial kill. That allows Elk to finish him off, and then it's just a 1v1 battle on one side between the supports, while Bin just barely not able to finish off Chovy and Peanut, who are getting out of there with blinking health bars.
It's BLG. They're gonna fight, okay? Like, we talked about it coming into this series, and if you dare them around the objective, they are happy to play that game. And you can see how confident they are. Yagao gets a nice stun onto Doran, but Yagao underneath the turret.
This is
He's
trouble
dead.
for Yagao. Doran should pick this one up, no problem.
Oh, he missed!
Away. No, Doran messed it up, and BLG get the kill instead. The mid laner survives. Doran's gonna want that one back, man. That was not good from the Gen G top.
Did he think that he had flash? Was that like a flash prediction? Because that seemed like it was way off. He could have just dropped it on his feet. He's point blank. He should have had it. I mean, this was a great initial play here. He sees the aggro is pulled, times the ulti beautifully to pull him in there. Yagao going to be tanking up the turret shots. The Q to slow ensures the last turret shot does hit. And then I thought it was pretty much a guaranteed kill. It was always going to be a trade as Shun is coming in as the TP does arrive. But right here, that looks like it was so far away. To me, that feels like a flash prediction. Maybe he thought he had flash.
I mean,
I don't know.
At least it was thrown in the right general direction. Like, I mean, it's a tough one. In his defense, three members of BLG so quick to collapse. Now with the Herald, they're likely going to break up in this mid-tier 1. But BLG, I think, surprising many with a strong early game performance and dominating in the fights. They're looking for another.
Chovy gets stunned up. He can't take the claw out. The Lyssandra's about to melt as BLG continue to push forward, and Chovy's the first one to die. Now the aggro shifts over onto Doran with Shun leading the charge. They bring in the wall thanks to Yagao, and Peanut is stuck on the wrong side. He'll be thrown back too. Elk grabs another. 3 dead bodies in Gen G uniforms, and BLG put them there.
BLG never hesitate. The second that they see Chovy out of position, they ruthlessly dive on top of him, and the fight explodes. A completely uncontested Dragon as BLG is dominating in game 1.
Yeah, BLG are just going off here. They spot him on the side. The laser connects on 2, and Bin just goes straight in. The counter-strike is perfectly timed. Elk flies over the wall, and then Yagao finds the angle for the wall here to follow up. As everyone is piling in, he's going to build a wall and make them pay for it too. as he's knocking down kill after kill against Gen G here, and they can easily retreat back to the Dragon.
And we talked about, when we looked at this Game 1 draft, we saw a lot of comfort picks on the side of BLG. The fact that Yagao gets his Talia is something he's very proficient on. Bin on a champion that he's so well known for. You can see them just dominating across the board. Yagao's having so much presence on the map. Yeah, he made a bit of a blunder in the bot lane where he almost lost his life. In terms of the 1v1 matchup, Chovy is getting the better, but it doesn't matter because his impact overall is resulting in teamfight wins for BLG.
And it's exactly what you were talking about, Isaac. He doesn't have to be the star of the show. The man is excellent at facilitating the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Being on a pick like the Talia allows him to do just that. The wall cutting everybody off, being able to follow these things up, and just support guys like Elk and guys like Bin, who, by the way, as a Jax, a true melee champion, topped the damage charts in the previous fight.
I mean, he was going off, and Bin is truly a master of this champion, but the Unraveled Earth is so good against Gen G's composition, right? You know, he's basically just using it as a follow-up. He's not even just throwing down his E randomly and trying to flick someone into it. He waits for a root from Shun, or he waits for him to engage from Bin, and then all of a sudden your Peanut or your Doran or your Delight and the Unraveled Earth is on you as you come out of a root or a stun. You can't use your dash, or if you do, you just get stunned up again. So there's not really any way from the retreat from those situations. So I think the timing from Yagao and the coordination from BLG in these fights has been on point.
Yeah, the zone control that BLG have with their composition was something we talked about at the beginning of the draft. And when we look at these objectives as well, you were highlighting it earlier, Azael, where if Gen G are not the first to the objective, think about what they have to walk through. Well, the saplings from Shun. You have to face check the Talia. What if Bin comes in from a flank? Like, there are so many things you have to be cautious of that ideally you want to be first to the objective, but now Gen G find themselves at such a deficit, they have to walk their way through, and with their dive composition, even if they do get on top of Elk, we've seen in multiple fights, he just ease over a wall. He splits the fight up. And Gen G, in every single fight that we've seen, have always been fighting a fight on two fronts. We've never seen them collectively all dive onto that target, get that execution, and then turn the fight in their favor.
I mean, it's really difficult because as soon as one target starts to dive, Maokai can just press ulti, right? And then the Unraveled Earth gets dropped as well. And it's hard for the rest of the Gen G members to really be able to fly into that backline and follow up. And BLG are just keeping pressure around this Baron, constantly clearing out these pink wards. It feels like it's been 2 or 3 in a row dropped over the wall from Gen G. So they're clearly very nervous about the potential start.
Yeah, it's trouble here for Gen G. I mean, you can look at the scoreline of Doran there in the top side with the Gragas. 0-4 and 0 has not been able to contribute to any of the 5 kills the team has got so far, which sort of just tells the same story you guys are talking about. We're not seeing them go in as a unit.
Yeah.
We're not seeing this team fight function.
Absolutely, and while Peyz does just complete a second item, so that feels good temporarily, Elk is very close to his third. So I think on his next base, he's probably going to sell Cole and have a Hurricane. And then he's going to be an entire item up here over Peyz, which is absolutely problematic. When he has the Lulu in pocket, he's playing Cleanse. Lulu very well could be going towards a Mikhail second, as we've seen become very popular at this tournament, especially when you're against the Rakan as well as Chovy here on the Lissandra. There's going to be so much value from that. And there is the Hurricane. Cole sold. He's got the gold, and he's an entire item up. He's feeling great.
Man, oh man, things are troubling here for Gen G in a series where everybody expected them to be the ones with the edge. Now they've got manpower in mid, trying to force down this tier 1 turret. But a teleport's coming in, and Nature's Grasp is flying out. Bin is teleported, but he's in the middle of everybody. He's trying to buy some time. He's going to be killed. Chovy's wasting the time of his opponents. It'll be a 1-for-1 trade, but Bin is worth more. I'll give the edge there in that trade to Gen G, but where does the fight go? Elk is hasted up, still looking to see if there might be anything more to find, but it doesn't look like it. Gen G calling the rest of this off.
Yeah, pretty interesting fight, as it was basically just 4v1 on 2 different fronts. As Chovy was looking for a flank himself, he gets collapsed on, as Bin does the same. Bin with the TP left in an isolated spot, but with Chovy gone, he does have the TP. 20 seconds though until he's alive.
They want Doran's TP. Doran showed bot, so this is why they're just going to be starting this up. They see Gen G in the area, so they're not going to be confident for the turn here. So we'll just pull it off. I thought they would have stayed more aggressively, at least tried to get the Gragas TP.
It could be because Bin doesn't have TP. They recognized the rate at which they were getting it. And then, yeah, the rate at which Chovy could collapse was that bit faster. The Dragon spawns in about 10 seconds. Wouldn't be surprised to see BLG slowly move their pressure down there. They need to get someone to catch this bot wave, and it looks like Yagao will be responsible for that. And force Doran back. Actually, they're just going to abandon this bot wave for now. Looks like Bin will be the one to catch it as the rest of BLG tried to keep Gen G away, and Gen G will stay far away from this objective.
Yeah, this is going to be Soul Point here, though, with the Infernal Soul really strong for this BLG team is they have a lot of damage dealers. I mean, there's even some Maokai AP. Obviously, it's a carry top. You have carry mid, you have carry bot, right? Like, this is 4 members on their team getting a lot of value out of this. The poke is going to become incredibly annoying from these saplings and whatnot that are just so easy to apply.
And we're hitting some pretty big points here on the side of BLG. 2 fully completed items there for the Maokai. Warden's Mail coming out next. Stopwatch just now purchased for Elk's inventory. You can see one also there in Bin's inventory. Those combined with the fact that there is a Crown of the Shattered Queen that was the first item completed for Yagao, it makes target selection very difficult for the side of Gen G.
I just like the itemization a lot more on the BLG side, the current place in the game, but also just the items that they're buying. We see Chovy going towards a Void Staff, but there's not really much of any MR purchased on the other side. We see a Morello from Doran. It's not really that much healing you have to worry about on the BLG side either. So I just think BLG, not only are they ahead in gold, but they have more efficient purchases.
So, Fedius, let me ask you then, what is the play here for the side of Gen G? Is it you hope that BLG get too hypey for their own good? You hope they overstep and you go for a punish? Or
This is what you hope for.
This is it? All right. Well, Delight is running up, seeing if maybe there's something to find here, but it doesn't look like there will be. Teleport showing up. That's what they wanted. They were trying to get the TP out. They'll find it from Doran, who's now at about half HP. Baron aggro still maintained, 4,000 HP, resetting back up to about 6K. BLG still maintaining pressure on the objective. Bin jumps forward, looking at Peanut, goes into the counter-strike, now activating the stopwatch. Baron's gonna go down, and BLG got it. Chovy gets away over the wall, but he's barely got any HP left. Gen G are running for the hills as Yagao goes forward and forces out the ulti from Peyz. BLG, look, and now flashes in. Health bars are critically low, and Peyz is critically dead. BLG are running them all down. 4 men in the dirt. Only Delight still stands, and BLG will march to the Nexus.
Who needs a recon when you can engage yourself on Zeri? Elk just fires himself into the middle of the team, flashes in, drops the ulti, and BLG will wipe Gen G from the map and march on the Nexus for game number 1.
We needed to see that aggro out of BLG. We needed to see ferocity out of these guys to go head-to-head with Gen G, and that's exactly what we got here in game number 1. They will bulldoze the base, take the first game, and lead this series.
I think defying many expectations with how dominant BLG have looked here in game 1. The fact that they were able to find that early dive bot for Elk, the contests around the neutrals, that first dragon, question marks around why Gen G tried to contest it. But the moment that BLG got a lead, they didn't slow down. They continued in their typical play style. They played around every neutral. They fought for every single one of them. Every time Gen G tried to contest them, they always fought them back. And overall, just a very clean performance. A couple slip-ups individually here and there from various members, but very little to criticize overall from BLG, who have come into this series defying these expectations that Gen G are the clear favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they played a really, really strong game. To me, the defining moment was just that bot lane dive, though. That actually slingshot Elk so far ahead of Peyz, it felt like. And Gen G were never really able to find a way to kind of wrest control back, right? They were always behind, it felt like, in the itemization, always on the back foot when it came to these objectives. BLG really dictated the pace from that because they took this lane that was already having push, put it way ahead. That allowed them to get access to all these dragons, to all these heralds, to always kind of be on the front foot and choosing the fights when they wanted them.
And even when we're looking at the transition between the early game and the mid game, when they were bouncing around the map, using the herald, getting Elk up there for the herald gold, okay, now send him back bottom, everybody's just chasing around back and forth. It worked out beautifully for BLG. You guys already talked about how they were never afraid to take the fights, and they were never afraid to win them either. With game number 1 all taken care of, let's toss it back to the analyst desk to break it down.
Thank you so much, Captain. BLG, they continue to say, we don't care about your expectations, about your power rankings, about being up against the favorites in this matchup. We're just going to play our game. And that was also, I feel like, what this draft was about. And maybe, just maybe, Gen G was lured into a false sense of security because they get such a good comp. But I just want to rattle off some stats. Yagao, 73.5 win rate on Taliyah, all time, 25-9. In the LPL Spring Playoffs for Elk, Zeri 6 wins, 1 loss, a KDA of 15.8. So they're saying we're actually pretty happy.
Well, it's actually really cool to see, because in this game 1, this is an idea. The only thing you'd replace there is you want Ari, right? Which obviously was banned. So for Gen G, this is basically a best case scenario, which is why going into the match was like, okay. But as you point out, on the flip side, it is also a dream scenario for the draft from BLG. There is Bin on a carry, right? There is Elk, as you mentioned, on a Zeri that he's had a lot of success on. And specifically, the angle for Talia here is really good. And Yagao went Crown as well. It was never about the damage. It was about enabling the rest of his team. And I think you also see that Gen G, even with a draft that works for them, you gotta execute. And that part, they did not really deliver on.
Yeah, the big thing for me looking at these 2 drafts was the setup, right? Because we have more traditionally seen in this tournament, trading the Jinx of Felios. As soon as the Jinx was banned out, and they first picked Maokai, we're like, okay, Xayah Rakan, super easy take here. But then, obviously, you already touched on it. Elk's Zeri, Bin's Jax, Yagao's Talia. Like, this is such a comfortable composition for BLG, and it reflects a lot more of the playstyle that we saw from them in the LPL playoffs, like in their unexpected bracket run to the finals.
Yeah, and that's the big one. I think this Talia angle was super, super good. Chronicler already kind of touched on it. You've got great disengage already coming through from the Maokai. At least the ability to peel for a lot of your backline for Elk. Same now with you add the Talia. And I think once you see how fed Elk was getting to that bottom side of the map, why not just go for the Crown of the Shattered Queen? As long as you don't die, this is going to work out perfectly. So I really like the adaptation BLG had, and as Emily hit on, the fact you get to play your style, play through this carry in a top side, and then have Elk carry in team fights just worked out beautifully.
Very much their style, and very much picking the fights that they should and executing on them when they should. And the second Dragon is a good example of that, and I believe you want to illustrate and show us maybe what we missed. Or what Gen G missed, perhaps.
Actually,
yeah, get over here.
Right? So call for stop and start yourself.
And on we go. What I want to highlight specifically as we roll the clip is that we have a very late TP coming in from Chovy here, right? So what's about to happen is we see Doran over here trying to keep some threats on Elk, but they're not actually able to take him down. And when the light goes in for the re-engage here, want to highlight that Elk is actually able to stay alive throughout all of it.
Yeah, the big thing here is that he has... Oh my gosh, Telestrator is trolling. Yeah, we are trying to draw here.
Three of us.
We planned this out, I promise.
POV, Gen G.
The big thing is, even when they try to jump on Elk, he already has Lulu ult. He is Zeri, so she has her own built-in escapes as well. And because the TPs came through so late, this is the bot dive that they brought up on Cass that I actually think was super important. It was in response to Peanut showing topside. And this narrowly did not work out. But this was what initially set Elk ahead and made such a difference in that lane.
Yeah, and 2 shout-outs, specifically Shun actually going for that play, but also Elk flashing across, right, making sure he actually could take down the Zeri. And as we go back here again, the team fighting from Gen G, which has been one of their biggest strengths, just didn't look good at all. Like, the light going in and finding great engages is fine if there's follow-up, but Doran was getting zoned away by the rest of BLG, and this is the same guy that on this specific pick dunked on T1, right? And you can see really the duality of Doran in this match.
But I think it's also a case of when we talk about BLG kind of dragging you down to how they want to play, this is a good example. It's about them trying to split out these fights, making sure that you're not coming in as this front-to-back squad. It's, you know, Bin going in, diving the back line, so then you have to spread it out into these mini skirmishes where Azeri can pop off, where Jax can do so much. And even then when you look at things like the Maokai, he can thrive as well, and just being able to lock down and take control of those targets you want to go on to.
And to BLG's credit as well, where we in the countdown said that sometimes they are overzealous, sometimes they pick the wrong skirmishes. I feel like they were quite patient. They were very cognizant of where the Gragas might come from. You don't agree, so do you mean Gen G?
No, I mean, like, there still had some BLG moments. Yeah, you can't fully take that out of them. But if it does devolve into that, right, that actually is in BLG's favor.
Absolutely.
Like, if they can kind of, as Rob said, like drag Gen G down with them and be able to separate what we've seen as strong 5v5s into smaller skirmishes, into picks, then that is their massive comfort zone.
Dagda, do you have a bell?
I did come prepared for today's class.
Okay, hold it near the mic and get us going.
Because it's round 1 for Bin versus Doran, because this was absolutely sick to see. The fact that we get this Jax coming through. And look, you can see Yag out here. He's crawling. He's trying to get the tag. He's trying to get to the rope. The clothesline comes across, but he's just barely able to duck it. And then from the top rope, Bin comes in and manages to save the day. But this was happening so consistently often, where Bin was able to get control in the matchup against the Gragas, find access to the back line, he wasn't been peeled, and even in the 1v1, he was getting massive leads in that top lane matchup. So Bin definitely coming out on top in this one.
Oh, I love it when a plan comes together that was set up before that. And also, I mean, it's adamant that we saw this coming in a way, right, Chronicler? Does that disappoint you?
No, because when laying it out today, when we started the cooking segment, this is exactly what we're talking about. To me, it's going to go back to draft. Gen.G will be going over the blue side, and the Maokai specifically, I think, really takes away a lot of what makes Gen.G good, particularly when they're playing a forward composition, because Peanut didn't really get to do anything, was behind a lot of the plays, and when you're behind with a Vi like that, don't have any impact.
It's difficult, but I'm sure Gen.G will make the adaptations. They want a chance to fight T1 once again, but it's BLG that jumps from the top rope and gets that first game in the series. We'll be right back with game 2.
It's not even going to be the point. They engage. The dive goes out, but they don't have the damage. Shun is low. Elk is low, but he's got the first blood, and they take down Peyz. It's BLG, but Gen.G has to run. Elk surfs over the wall. Zap! And he grabs a second kill. Doran should pick this one up, no problem.
Oh, he missed!
Oh! Wait, no! No, Doran messed it up, and BLG gonna kill instead. The mid laner survives. As Yagao goes forward and forces out the ulti from Peyz. BLG, look, and Elk flashes in. Health bars are critically low, and Peyz is critically dead. BLG are running them all down. 4 men in the dirt. Only Delight still stands, and BLG will march to the next set.